With only 3 drivers left that can win the 2025 F1 World Championship, I thought I'd jump on the F1 25 game and simulate the last 3 races to see what the game thinks the outcome of this year's championship would look like. The final races take place at Las Vegas, Qatar and Abu Dhabi. A sprint race is also included that takes place at Qatar as well. Going into these final races, Lando Norris does lead the championship on 390 points, 24 points clear of his teammate Oscar Piastri, with Max Verstappen sitting in P3, a further 25 points behind him. The top 3 is covered by 49 points, but how will that look by the time we get to Abu Dhabi? But our first stop would be in Las Vegas for round 22 of this championship. Charles Leclerc would take pole position for Ferrari, with Oscar Piastri just missing out behind him by 10,000ths of a second in P2. Followed behind them would be Lando Norris and Max Verstappen, followed by Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. Yuki Tsunoda and Pierre Gasly would be next, followed by Carlos Sainz and Nico Hülkenberg rounding off the top 10. So as the race got going here in Vegas, Leclerc led the pack. He started on the hard tyres, Piastri took the lead into the first corner on the soft tyres, and Lando Norris swooped around the outside of Leclerc on the medium tyres. So a mix of different strategy here in Vegas. As we moved on to the Las Vegas strip, it was 3 wide going into the final few corners, with Leclerc, Norris and Verstappen so close to contact, but Norris luckily avoided them and everybody else didn't manage to hit each other. Hamilton went through on Leclerc and Verstappen a lap later, as the Las Vegas strip once again proven to be the best place for overtaking. But in the first sector here, the Ferraris continued their battle into the end of the first sector, and Verstappen making an absolutely phenomenal move around the outside of Leclerc in the braking zone and passing Lewis Hamilton as well. But as we headed on to the Las Vegas strip again, both Ferraris swamped Verstappen into the final few corners, with Lewis Hamilton coming out ahead again. As they went single file for a few laps, Verstappen slowly started to pick up the pace, went past Leclerc and then slowly went past Lewis Hamilton and managed to get away from them. Piastri would pit on lap 14 to take his soft tyres off and put the mediums on, while Norris pitted 10 laps later to take the medium tyres off and put on the hards to do a one-stopper to the end of the race. 4 laps after Norris came in, Leclerc and Verstappen was in for their one stop, with Verstappen starting on the hards and putting on the mediums, and same goes for Leclerc. A few laps after that, Piastri would be in once again to put on another set of medium tyres to go for a fast stint to the end of the Grand Prix. Piastri would encounter a smoking car in front, and it was in fact Lewis Hamilton in P4 as he nearly runs into the back of him there. Piastri would swoop past Lewis Hamilton there as Hamilton would go onto the tyre. There was no safety car called, and Piastri was still on the hunt as he went round the outside of Leclerc into the first corner, putting himself up to P3. Next would be Max Verstappen 4 laps later as he swooped past the Red Bull onto the Las Vegas strip, as he would now set his sights on his teammate Lando Norris. 3 laps to go and Piastri was on the hunt, but he could not catch his teammate Lando Norris, who managed to keep a consistent gap and won the Grand Prix by 3 seconds. Piastri would come home second, with Max Verstappen just holding on to Leclerc in third. Nearly deja vu there with Leclerc and Perez from 2023. Leclerc trying to pull off a last minute move here in Vegas. So Lando Norris wins for Piastri and Max Verstappen, the top 3 in the championship in order. So with the results from Las Vegas, this now means the final 3 in the championship would be covered by 59 points. And unfortunately for Max Verstappen's sake, there are only 58 points left up for grabs. This now means he is now eliminated from championship contention and headed to Qatar, where the championship can be won at that Grand Prix weekend. 3 championship contenders then become 2. So it may not be a 5th consecutive world championship for Max Verstappen, but that definitely didn't slow him down as we headed to Qatar for the sprint race, and Max Verstappen would take sprint pole alongside Oscar Piastri, with Lando Norris sitting comfortably behind him in P3 alongside George Russell. Behind them would be the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc and Yuki Tsunoda in P6. Behind them would be Lewis Hamilton and the rookie Fernando Alonso, and Alexander Albon and Kimi Antonelli would round off the top 10. So as the Qatar sprint got underway, Verstappen led Piastri and Norris, and as we headed towards turn 1, the 3 drivers went 3 wide into the first corner. Deja vu to the actual Qatar Grand Prix in 2023. This time no contact. Piastri led from Norris, who managed to get round Verstappen as well. So it was a McLaren 1-2 here in Qatar after the first lap. A few laps later though, Norris would take the lead of the sprint, while Russell and Verstappen were battling behind for P3. Piastri would fight back a lap later and retake the lead of the sprint. Russell and Verstappen behind were having their own battle, followed by Leclerc, Hamilton and Alonso. This would not be the end of the battles between the 2 McLarens though, because every lap since the beginning of the Grand Prix they were full out going for it. I'd say duel in the desert, you could say again, just like it was between the two Mercedes at Bahrain in 2014. The McLaren's fully going for it. They know how much is up for grabs here in the final races of this championship, so it's nice to see the McLarens were fully going all out in these final races. Many of the times it was very easy overtakes between the two McLaren drivers, but there were some occasions where they did come close to contact and were fully going for it in the first few corners. As the McLarens continued their battle, Max Verstappen's engine decided to give up, and that was him out of the Qatar sprint. No safety car was called for Verstappen's stricken Red Bull at the side of the road, and that meant Piastri and Norris could continue their fantastic battle going into the first corner. This was so close between them here on lap 16, with Norris retaking the lead once again and Piastri nearly hitting the back of his teammate. But a lap later, Piastri gets a fantastic run on Norris, takes the lead into the first corner, and surprisingly, Piastri would take off after that. So if he was saving his tyres to the end of the race, even though he was racing with his teammate, it clearly paid off because Norris could not catch him. Piastri would win the sprint from Lando Norris by 1.4 seconds. A further 4 seconds behind them was Russell and Leclerc. So after the Qatar Grand Prix sprint, this now means the championship closes up by 1 point, meaning a total of 30 points separate the two McLarens heading into the actual Qatar Grand Prix. Piastri now needs to score 6 more points than Norris to make sure the championship goes to the season finale in Abu Dhabi. If Piastri does not beat Norris in this race, Lando Norris would win the championship here in Qatar. And crucially for Piastri's sake, he would outqualify Norris, but once again, a Flying Dutchman would take pole position, but this time for the actual Grand Prix, with Max Verstappen taking pole alongside Oscar Piastri in second. Lando Norris would be third alongside George Russell, with Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton rounding off the third row. Yuki Tsunoda and Fernando Alonso would round off the fourth row, alongside the two Williams who would round off the top 10. So the Qatar Grand Prix was underway, and once again, just like it was last time, Oscar Piastri pulled alongside Max Verstappen and took the lead at the Grand Prix into the first corner with no contact behind. But Verstappen wasn't playing about though, because 2 laps later he was attacking the McLaren driver into the first corner. So close between them here, but Verstappen manages just to hold on to take the lead of the Qatar Grand Prix. But Piastri wasn't having any of it because he retook the lead a lap later. While Piastri led from Max Verstappen by a second, a further battle behind was occurring as Lando Norris had fallen behind George Russell and Lewis Hamilton here, who's trying to go round outside of him into the first corner, which he managed to do so, putting Lando Norris down into P5 in the early stages of this race. And just as you think it couldn't get any worse from Lando Norris, he'd fallen 2 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton and had a spin into the first corner, nearly putting it into the barriers, and that is massive for the championship, with Piastri leading at this stage of the race. He managed to get back going again and rejoined in P9 behind Pierre Gasly. But after a few drivers ahead of him made an early pit stop, he would be flying after the mistake and managed to pass Leclerc and put himself back into P4 in this race. After the only round of pit stops, George Russell would see himself ahead of Max Verstappen, but not for long, because Russell and Verstappen would then duel into the first corner, going side by side, close between the two drivers, but Verstappen would get the better of George Russell, retaking P2. But just as Verstappen thought he was going to get away, Russell came right back at him and swooped round the outside of him into the first corner, doing exactly what Verstappen did to him on the previous lap. This battle would continue on for a few laps as Verstappen would then swoop past Russell onto the main straight and later would pull away in the final stages of the Grand Prix. He would then set his sights on a 10-second gap to Oscar Piastri, which he did bring down to 5 seconds near the end of the Grand Prix, but it was too late because Piastri would come across the line and win the Qatar Grand Prix. Max Verstappen would finish second, with George Russell a further 8 seconds behind. Then a further 8 seconds behind Russell came Lando Norris, and that just took a massive swing in the championship. So heading into the final race of the season, 30 points then become 17 between the two McLaren drivers. That was all down to Piastri winning the race and Lando having a little mistake out of turn 1, costing him a few positions and finishing 4th. So if Oscar Piastri has any chance of winning this championship now, he needs to outscore Lando by 18 points, meaning if Lando doesn't score, he must win the race or finish second to take the title. Now in any scenario where both McLarens do score, the only way Piastri can take this championship is if he wins the Grand Prix and Lando finishes 7th or lower. And heading into the final race of the season, Piastri would make a massive statement by taking pole position ahead of Red Bull's Max Verstappen just by 0.03 of a second, getting the early advantage on teammate Lando Norris, who once again would qualify P3 alongside Charles Leclerc. Russell and Hamilton would come next, alongside Yuki Tsunoda and Fernando Alonso, and rounding off the top 10 would be Pierre Gasly and Kimi Antonelli. A complete mix of strategy here, with Piastri being on the hards, Norris and Verstappen on the medium, and Leclerc started on the soft. We got underway here in Abu Dhabi. It was a good start from the top 3, but Leclerc got an absolutely monumental start as he started on the grippier tyres. Lando Norris was down to 4th, but he managed to hang on somehow at the first corner and got better traction and swooped round the outside of Verstappen to then go up to P2. Absolutely incredible from Lando Norris, which he needed to do at this stage of the race. A lap later though, Verstappen would be on the hunt and he repassed Lando Norris to take P2 in the race. A lap later, Verstappen was on the hunt once again. He was on the faster medium tyre compared to Piastri's hards, and he would take the lead of the Grand Prix, with Norris also losing the position to Leclerc. As the race settled down, Verstappen led Piastri from Norris. Leclerc would come into the pits on lap 12 to get rid of his soft tyres. And Verstappen might want to get rid of his medium tyres too, because they're starting to wear, as Piastri then retakes Verstappen to take the lead of the Grand Prix. Verstappen did come into the pits a few laps later, put on another set of medium tyres, making it clear that he's going to go for a two-stopper. Luckily for Verstappen, he would come out the pits ahead of his teammate and got a good gap to Leclerc, who was a massive threat earlier in the race as well. Norris would then follow suit, and a lap later so would Piastri. Piastri would then put on another set of hard tyres, surprising everybody actually, because you'd think he would have went for the medium tyres for a faster stint, but no, he's going for a longer stint again in the middle of this race. He would come out behind Max Verstappen and try to hunt him down once again, which he did 10 laps later. They had already pulled a 12-second gap to Lando Norris at this stage of the race, and it looked like a two-way fight for the win between the two. Verstappen would try to hold on to the lead, but Piastri would swoop round the outside and retake the lead of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Verstappen 6 laps later put the hards on to go to the end of the Grand Prix, followed by Lando Norris a lap later, who would do exactly the same. Piastri would follow suit again and pit 2 laps later after both drivers and put on the medium tyres. Verstappen would retake the lead of the Grand Prix just like he did in the first stint, and Piastri would then have to hunt him down once again, but this time he was on the faster medium tyres with Verstappen on the hards. And Piastri was making the most of his medium tyres because he caught Verstappen very quickly and retook the lead of the race. But Verstappen would not give up the race win, and he would come right back at the McLaren driver, and there was Lance Stroll, who's just spun out the corner, and you can see the two drivers battling for the lead have now caught up, and there's a massive pile up there. Lance Stroll has spun and blocked Max Verstappen. He's still blocking him, in fact, and that has managed to cause a red flag. An absolutely unbelievable turn of events here. You just can't make this stuff up. Lance Stroll spins, and as Verstappen tries to retake the lead, he gets blocked because Stroll's car is parked in the middle of the road. Bo Toletto would get blocked as well alongside Liam Lawson. Piastri would manage to get through though, but this would just cause a red flag. Within 5 seconds of these cars being parked, the red flag was called. No safety car, even though the cars got going again. Red flag called. With 12 laps to go, the top 2 in the championship are P1 and P3, but as a 12 lap sprint on the soft tyres, as you can see, the whole field would opt to go for the soft tyres, and this is going to be chaos. And as we got going for the final 12 laps of this championship, Verstappen instantly attacked Piastri, who somehow managed to hang on to the lead of the race. And as the laps went on, it was single file from the top 7. And I'm going to be honest, I was getting deja vu to Abu Dhabi 2016. Remember when Lewis Hamilton backed up the pack to try and get Nico Rosberg overtaken so he could win the championship? But this time it's between Piastri and Norris, with literally the drivers being all in the same position. But I don't know if that backfired for Piastri, because on lap 55 Verstappen then passed him to take the lead of the Grand Prix, with Lando Norris following close behind. The top 3 covered by absolutely nothing. You're lucky if it's half a second. So close between them all. Piastri would then go on to retake the lead of the Grand Prix once again. Verstappen was trying to get Piastri to the end of the Grand Prix, but he couldn't do so. Piastri was placing the car very well and deploying his energy when he needed to. And onto the final lap of the race, it was Piastri from Verstappen, Norris, Russell, Leclerc, Tsunoda, Gasly, Ocon, Hamilton and Albon who were the top 10. This is absolutely incredible to see though. The top 3 in the championship absolutely line their stern as they come through into the final section of Abu Dhabi. Deja vu here to Abu Dhabi 2016. Obviously there was 4 cars involved then, but it's still a very similar scenario to see the runner-up in the championship, who's now going to go on to win the final race of the season. But it is now official that Piastri is the runner-up, because Lando Norris has done everything he has to do in this race to make sure the championship goes to him in 2025. Lando Norris is your 2025 Formula 1 World Champion.
I love you all. I love you all. Thank you so much. We did it, Will! We did it!
So this means your official top 10 in the F1 2025 World Championship would look like this. Lando Norris would take the championship from Oscar Piastri, which incredibly he closed down to just 7 points in the final race after a 31-point deficit after Vegas. Verstappen followed behind in P3 alongside George Russell. Both Ferraris would come next, with Antonelli would remain in P7 alongside Albon in P8. Nico Hulkenberg would secure P9 for Sauber, just ahead of Yuki Tsunoda, who had a very good final stint there and managed to jump himself up into the top 10. So the only thing that changed in that order in the top 10 in the driver standings was Yuki Tsunoda jumping up into P10. And the same can be said with the team standings, as everybody remained in exactly the same position as they did after the Brazilian Grand Prix. McLaren won from Mercedes, followed by Red Bull and Ferrari. Williams would get their best result for a long time in P5. Followed by them would be Racing Bulls, who just hung on to P6 from Aston Martin and Haas closely behind. Kick Sauber would be in 9th, and Alpine would round off the top 10. And there you go guys, there is your final races of the 2025 season simulated by the F1 25 game. What did you think of that? I thought it was absolutely crazy to see Piastri pull back that 31-point deficit after Vegas. And you never know, we might get a scenario like this. It's not going to be perfect obviously, but remember to come back to this video when the championship is done to see how close the point standings did turn out to the actual results. But if you enjoyed this video guys, make sure to hit the subscribe button to see more content like this, and it helps me reach my current goal of 150,000 subscribers as well, so that would be very much appreciated. And yeah guys, take care now, and I will see you in my next video.